So I am a big believer in gifts. I like receiving gifts, but I like giving them. But I more so am a big believer that everyone is innately born with gifts. Gifts that they can share, that they can teach, a gift to be loved, a gift to love, a gift to make an impact wherever they stand. And no matter what, know that gift will be received by other people in the world. But in way too far of our communities in America, a lot of students, a lot of youth are not being equipped, are not being entrusted, are not being connected to the resources and the tools and the mindset of unlocking their gifts within their schools and their communities. And a big reason that this happens is primarily because there's a lot of social division. There's a lot of economic inequality. There's a lot of academic malfunctions that are happening within our schools and within our communities. And these divisions are what really keep us from embracing students where they are. And in many cases, it's the underprivileged, the impoverished youth, the minority youth, who are really left behind and untapped when it comes to social innovation. And as a kid, I was one of these students. I grew up in Cleveland, Mississippi, a very, very rural town that you cannot find on any map except for the Mississippi map. My family was only comprised of my brother and my mom. Divorce and abuse drove my family apart. In my community, economic inequality was so vast that on the street that I lived in, we didn't even have a paved road. The foundation to my house was just a bunch of pillars. This is something that you see in a lot of different communities. But one thing that my family did have was this value of education, this value of working hard, this value of using and unlocking whatever is within us to get out of that situation. And so that's what I did. And in the process of this, there were some things that I really struggled with. I was a very curious kid. I always had a paintbrush or a marker or a pen or anything in hand to express myself. But at the same time, within my community, there was nothing structured to give me an outlet. And that made me bottle up. As much as I expressed myself through the arts, I also fought a lot. I fought my brother. I fought my friends. I got suspended in the 3rd grade for fighting on the school bus because a guy called my little cousin out of her name. I had all of this built up because no one was around to really help me unlock that. And although I excelled in school and in class, there was not an avenue of really getting me to engage with myself and engage with my peers. And so that became a big, big challenge for me and something that I fought hard and long to really get myself out of. So in Cleveland, like I said, there was a lot of social division. One of the main dividing lines within our community was a railroad track right east of a street called Cotton Row. How ironic. And this railroad track kept people who were more wealthy, who were of the majority, on the west side of town. They had the university, they had the high quality schools, they had the grocery stores, and on the east, we had a high school that was pretty much a swamp. We had slave homes that were still in existence, even in 2013. These were the different divides within this community. And over time, with my artwork, with the work that I was doing in different communities as I grew older, I found myself coming to the city of St. Louis, Missouri, for my undergraduate education as well as my graduate education. And guess what? Different city, but same issue. In St. Louis, we have a street called Delmar, one of the most popular streets in our city, that divides the town from the north and the south. On the south side of the city, you can find homes that are average maybe at, $335,000 in their value. But right north of that one dividing line, we find a community that doesn't even have families that are making $18,000 per family unit on average. We find a series of communities actually that have a vacancy rate of 33% and higher. These are the issues that are plaguing our communities, And these are the things that are really affecting the education of the youth within these communities. But this isn't anything new to you guys. You live here in Greenville. You've seen it for yourselves. You've experienced the classroom. You've seen the division. You've explored and traveled. And you've seen this in many of our large cities. Cities like Chicago, cities like Baltimore, cities like New Orleans. It's not anything that's dramatically new. But it's something that's long-standing, something that is deeply rooted, and something that we're still trying to figure out. How do we use different mechanisms to bridge these divides and to really educate our youth in a more impactful and powerful way? So I started looking at this myself. In my practice, I was trained as a communications designer. And a big part of my design question or my research question was, one, how can we utilize this field, design with a capital D, to really bridge a lot of these divides, increase the dialogue of communities, really tap into civic engagement, and provide healing? How can design be a tool of healing? Secondly, how can we use the power of underserved youth? How can we tap into this network of people who have talents, who have gifts, who have things to share, but their environments just haven't afforded them to be able to attend a great university like Washington University or like Furman University? How do we tap back into that community? So I started with something that I love most, stories. That's how I started answering question number one. I shared my story. A lot of different stories in my life have really made me who I am today. One of those stories is of me being in 7th grade, my first witness of a bias incident where a white young male took my markers. Granted, I'm very sensitive about my art supplies. Took my markers and drew swastikas on all of the Jewish students' desks. And when I confronted him, you know what he told me? He said, well, I will never do that to you. You are a good N-word. For years, I did not know how to express that. I was like, well, do I say thank you? Or, what does this all mean? In 7th grade, I didn't have the vocabulary. I didn't really have the expression, the tools to really express that. Secondly, I also shared stories of my own upbringing. The fact that when I was 15, my mother, a single parent, lost both of her jobs that was sustaining our family. And my big brother and I, we hustled. We tapped into ourselves. Him as a person who can really cook, and myself as someone who's really talented in the visual arts. And I sold my first painting when I was only 15 years old for $150. My second painting was auctioned off at $3,000 to someone on our board of education, tapping into the gifts that children and youth have to get their families out of these types of situations. And from that particular moment, that became my mission. Third, as I expressed, I was very, very smart as a kid. I don't know about now. I don't know. But one of the biggest things that I suffered with was this pressure to always perform. I wanted so badly to be out of the circumstances of my youth that I didn't sleep. I got into everything that I could. And the first time that I made a C, which was my first semester of my freshman year in college, I thought my world was going to end. I thought I was going to lose my scholarship. I had a full academic scholarship to WashU, and I just did not know what to do. So I learned how to express this through the visual arts, and I started sharing my own story. Well, that story opened me up to the stories of other students who were going through similar problems, who had similar experiences and themes come up in their own childhood. And that brought me to a point of just really interacting with stories. And so in this image, you can see how one of my partners and I, we took a truck, gutted it out, and created a space within it that was similar to a dining room. And we went through the city of Denver and just parked at different spaces and invited homeless members of the community to have pie with us. And as we gave them pie, they told us stories. And as they told us stories, we learned. And as we learned, we were able to express. And this is what started one of the programs that I lead called United Story. Secondly, the question that was the biggest one for me was, how do we empower our youth? How do we take those homeless youth? How do we take the youth in Mississippi? How do we take the youth in St. Louis? How do we take youth who are being shielded from the opportunities that really exist in our communities? And so I started by writing a manifesto called the Catalyst Paradigm, and it identified various ways of doing this. And in actualizing that, one thing that really started to come up were different opportunities to embrace this in other communities. So I went to Greensboro, Alabama with one of our other speakers, Ethan Botner, and one thing that I really learned from this experience was how to fail, how to embrace it. It was the scariest moment of my life. I was like, we are doing something that could be very powerful in this community, but we've taken it in the wrong direction. And so by doing that, by failing, that's when I was able to be equipped with the guts, with the fearlessness, with a new mindset to go back into my own community. You know what I was met with when I went back? This. The fact that what I thought in my youth was true. There was nothing structured, nothing in place to really give our youth opportunities in Cleveland, Mississippi, in Bolivar County, in Hill County. And it was something that was pretty devastating to me, to the point where I decided to create something. On my birthday in 2011, I launched a Kickstarter, and I said I wanted to go back into my own communities and really entrust, not empower, not equip, but entrust the youth there with the tools and the gifts and the resources and connections to really make something happen. I only started out with about $2,000. But from that $2,000, we have now taken that back to Cleveland, Mississippi, back to St. Louis, Missouri, as a program called Design Serves, D-Serve. With this program, what we've been able to do is put the tools of design, of graphic design, industrial design, of photography, of community arts, into the hands of preteens, and say, what are the issues that you identify? What is it that you feel like you deserve in your community? And how can we, as adults, just facilitate that process? How can we make the connections to make this happen? How can we think about the red tape and the loopholes so that you don't have to be jaded by anything that affects or disrupts your own creativity? So that was something that was really powerful. And now this program, D-Serve, the curriculum for it, has now been picked up by the Clinton Global Initiative University to be one of the 2013 commitments to action. Now allowing us to say, well, how can we take this to other communities? How can we get this to New Orleans? How can we get this to Poinsett? How can we get this to students in Mexico? And just really think about the opportunities that youth, underprivileged youth, can really have in these communities. So with this, one of the biggest models that we've created is one that allows us to do 3 different things no matter what project we have. 1, connect. Always thinking about how can we utilize what is already in the community, not see ourselves as saviors, not see ourselves as the change makers, but really be the people who just make connections, creative connections, social connections, political connections to get things done. How then we then work with a community to create things. How then we take the things that we create and that we prototype and that we iterate and then use that and sustain it. How do we tap into those resources together in a united way? So with that, I think a lot about the future of education. Not necessarily online or high-tech education, but thinking about how can we utilize what's already in place and rethink that, rethink some of those systems within it. How can the community become the classroom? How can our peers become our professors? How can our assignments be just actions that we take in communities? Standardized tests become the solutions that we create. How can we transform the way we think about our education and go from there? Secondly, how can we make it more empathetic? How can a student with a background like mine continue to rise and be a part of conversations and share a stage like TED and not have to worry about where my next meal is coming from, or what trouble I'm going to get into because there's nothing in place for me. How can we empower our youth to be of that learning model? Third, eliminating the failure mindset. How can we tap into all of ourselves and say, well, if I do make a bad grade, it's not the end of the world, but this is an opportunity for me to grow, for me to learn, for me to adapt and move on and grow from there. So these are 3 of the elements that I really, really want to focus on when I think about the future of education. But the thing that I really ask of you all is don't forget about the youth who are in need. Don't forget about the youth who may look completely different from you, who may have a different religion, who may have a different background, a different story. Because those students, those youth, those people, those individuals, they also have great gifts that can be unlocked. Thank you.